and Melissa decides to actually join a cult, actively made that choice. That was so much better than being an independent woman. Okay.
Welcome to chapter 6. We are so excited that we are, well, I mean, I don't know if excited is the word to use.
No, I really am excited. Like,
Yeah.
it's odd. It is odd because, like,
It's weird to feel excited over something
that was so traumatizing.
But I'm so excited to tell you why I have spent thousands of dollars in therapy.
Right. And you too can recover your agency. And you can laugh at your past too, just like we do.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
We have this awkward banquet, right? Like the most awkward banquet ever. And I don't think it was awkward for everyone. Not everyone picked up on the tension. Like, I could feel the tension, like, at this banquet. Like, it was unsettling.
Yes, but you knew things.
I knew things. So, did you go to this banquet? I'm sure you did. I'm sure you sang. Or were you still, Restaurant Barbie?
Yeah, so I was still Restaurant Barbie, but right before this banquet happened, and it would have been was it a Sunday night?
It was a Sunday night, yep.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I don't think I went, but because I had reached the pinnacle point of, I had been convinced that my having a career, being the breadwinner in my family, and doing great things was just not fulfilling. And my life was meaningless if I didn't give my life to the church and homeschool my children and be a good housewife and be in ministry. And that's what I needed to do. And I said it in an episode previous to this, that I was like, I really felt like I was being, fished after.
Oh, yeah.
Of like having the women's ministry thing dangled in front of me. And it was said as directly as it could have been without being said directly. Like, look, you can have all of this and finally be happy. And your husband won't be an a-hole. Because you'll be a quiet, domicile woman in ministry. And all will be well. And I fell for it. And I turned in, not a 2-week notice, I turned in like a 3-month notice. Because management's a big deal. And I'm like, look, it's going to take you, you need to know. Like, it's going to be a transition. And so I planned it out. And then I was, I'm like, this gives you time to find somebody and time for me to train them. And, if you find somebody earlier, I'll step down earlier, but, we can work on that. But I turned in. So January 15th, I was going to be done managing the restaurant on April 15th.
Okay. Which is right before the banquet. So we did the banquet early this year. I was trying to remember why. Because it was abnormally early. We usually did it like the last Sunday of the month, but this year we did it January 19th. So I was like, oh, maybe, because like if the Super Bowl, we're not going to do it on the same night as the Super Bowl because we can not have church for the Super Bowl, but we do have to have church on the 4th of July. And so,
America.
yes, it makes zero sense.
It makes sense when you get to make up your own rules. That's how that goes.
True, very true. So it wasn't. The Super Bowl was on February 2nd. So I was like, why did we do this so early? And I don't specifically remember where Tom and Charlotte were going. I know they went on a trip, their big trip to, where do they go every year?
Like
Not
St.
the Bahamas.
Thomas, the Virgin Islands.
The Virgin Islands. There you go. They go to the Virgin Islands every year. Or like every couple
or the
years.
Caribbean or what? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere down there.
Yeah. So they did that right before Christmas. So it wasn't that, but they were going on a trip. It wasn't far. I think they were going to like the East Coast or something, if I remember correctly. But I do specifically remember because we had gone to Georgia. We come back. Tom is up my ass about all of this stuff we learned at this conference, right? And implementing it all. And Charlotte is on board. So she is annoying AF. Like she is coming into the office every couple days asking questions about Facebook and like, hey, we should do this. And hey, we should do this. So just imagine a boomer who all of a sudden understands not social media fully, but understands that social media can be powerful. So
and they just got their hands on it.
Yes. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, we should do this. And I'd be like, yeah, we already do that. I've been doing that for like 4 years now.
Yeah.
So
look, I got a Facebook. Did you know it did this?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Charlotte would do something and she'd be like, I messed it up. I messed it up. I don't know how to fix it. And then we'd have to come in and fix her Facebook for her. I just praise God that it wasn't during the times of like MySpace where they could actually like, change their backgrounds and music and stuff. And because that would have been an all out nightmare. So thankfully it was just Facebook, but they were driving me ever loving batty. Like they were driving me batshit crazy. And so I remember having this like, we just got to get through the banquet and then they'll be gone for a whole week. And then we could actually get work done because they'll be gone.
Yeah.
And like, I remember like me and Lori in the office just being like, they're gonna leave. We're so excited. Like, and then we dropped this bomb, on New Year's Eve that there's a coup being staged and they don't go on their trip.
Yeah.
But if I'm remembering correctly, I think that's why we had to move the banquet up that year is because I think they were going somewhere. And so we had to move it up. But so it was January 19th and I have never fully understood the like you could cut the tension with a knife feeling until this banquet.
Yeah.
Because I'm part of the setup team. We get everything set up. I have the covenants printed and laminated and on the tables because we are not going to go through what we went through with Young Gun. We are going to present the covenant clearly. And things that the general congregation didn't know was that a couple years before this, it might have even been the year before this, there was a guy who we didn't fully present the covenant. And we just did the whole, like, Bill Nye the Color Guy got up and was like, "Hey, are you saved? If you're not saved, here, let me present the colors to you. And we can get you saved real fast. And, have you been baptized? And, if you've been baptized, you just check that box right there. And then, and the covenant. And that's just, if you agree to the covenant, then you check that box. And then, hey, now you're a voting member of Come
No,
As You Are."
it's even better than that. And if you want to be a part of our family and we want to be a part of your family, just check that box. Family for life.
So most people just checked it. And I think everyone thought they knew the covenant, but like, if you actually, this is how we discovered this, that people thought they knew, but they really didn't, because this guy went to a banquet. He was new to the church, and they were, Bill Nye the Color Guys, presenting this, and he's like, "Well, what does this mean?" And no one at his table could tell him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, you check the box." And they're like, "Well, yeah, just check the box. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just that you agree to, like, follow the rules of Come As You Are." And he's like, "Yeah, but like, what are they?"
Yeah. I feel like for me, at some point, I don't know if I ever saw the covenant or if I had just been told about it so much I believed I had seen it.
Exactly.
And so, like, every year you're just in the habit and the routine of signing this, like, you had to sign it every year.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
you
you're
felt like I
presented it-
signed it once, I might as well just re-sign it.
Yeah. And you're presented it during 201.
Yeah.
And so I think
And you don't want to be the person who's like, oh, I don't know. So you just do, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of mental manipulation in that.
Yeah. So this guy really pushed of like, why are you having us sign things that we don't know what it is? And so he came in and had a meeting with Tom, and Tom threw me so far under the bus. It was like, well, Amanda was supposed to put it on the sheet, so I guess if she didn't, I'll make sure she does that next year. And I'm like,
Gee, thanks, Tom.
"Sir, we are using the same template for this paper since 1998. And full disclosure, I'm not the one who made the effing papers. Lori did.
Yeah.
I didn't make those papers. And like I said, the template was made before Lori even started working in the office. And so I would help print the papers and put them into groups. And so I went this year in 2020, I went and, we laid the covenant out. I had it all printed nicely and laminated. And we had one per table because it was a whole, like, we're not going to let people walk away with them. So if we make it like,
you can read it now,
yeah,
but you can't study it later.
Yes. And so I put, I was the person from the office. So like the decorating team came in. They, the guys had moved all the chairs, set up tables. The decorating team came in, put their tablecloths and their centerpieces on and everything. And then I came in and I made sure every place had a pen. Everyone had, the papers that they needed and the covenant and all the stuff you had to sign and all the propaganda from all the ministries. I made sure all of those were on all the tables, right? And so as I'm finishing setting up, I had left church that day, gone home, did what I needed to do at home, and then got dressed and came early to the church because we were going to do mic checks and we were going to run through the music with the worship team and all of that. And so I left my kids at home. I think at this point in time, they were all old enough. Like, we didn't even have babysitters. And I'm pretty sure Brandy came and dropped her boys off at my house. And my kids loved it. Like, we ordered pizza and they got to hang out and watch a movie, and they loved it, right? And they were all old enough that they could stay home. And then Justin just came and met me at the banquet. But as I'm setting up, Charlotte asked me, "Where are you sitting?" And I said, oh, well, we usually sit back, in the back corner, and I'll probably sit back here. So then if I need to, like go up into the sound booth or whatever, I can do that. And she's like, no, 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 no. And she brings me up because her and Tom would always sit at like this front corner table so they could get on and off the stage easily. And it was like in the same spot, like if her chair that she sat in on Sunday service was at a table, like it was about the same spot she sat on Sundays for service too. So she's like, you guys need to sit here with us. You and Brandy actually attended this banquet because Brandy always, even if she started like, oh, I think I can be in the banquet, she would always get pulled off to go help in childcare and stuff. So Brandy is at the banquet sitting, and so at a table it is Tom and Charlotte, Jason and Brandy, me and Justin. And we are front row, right?
You feel so special.
I
go to the lead table.
I felt uncomfortable because I already felt like people didn't like me and people assumed I was bossy and I had to have my way. So for me to sit at a front table felt like I was putting more of a spotlight on myself. So I felt uncomfortable in that, but I felt very like almost like bitchy, confident that everyone who was staging the coup would see where we were sitting, and it was like they would walk in and be like, oh, you've picked the side of the church, and so it felt like I was making a statement by where I sat, but I also felt very uncomfortable that my statement I was making in order to prove my point to a very small group of people was going to make me look bad to the masses. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because like this whole time at Come As You Are is very much like these dual personality moments, that happen, dual emotion moments that happen, not really personalities, but dual emotion moments that happen where you feel very strongly in two different directions, where you're like I'm confident and yeah, it's about time, like, and it's almost like a recognition, but it's like, yeah, this is where like I've been asked to sit here, nah,
Yeah.
like on one hand, but on the other hand, you have all the narratives in your head where you're like, oh, these people are going to think like I need to sit in the back, because you're taught to be a servant leader, and who am I to sit up here? And yeah, I get it. No, that is your journey through religious organizations like this. There is no connection with yourself. You feel very pulled in multiple directions, and I mean, like, that's the point, that's the purpose of these organizations, is to keep there is no balance, there is no, all the things they talk about, there's no real freedom, there's no real balance, there's no real wholeness, there's no real safety. They tell you not to live in fear, but they're the ones instilling the fear in you, and so that does not surprise me at all, what you just described.
Yeah. So the group, it was like it's not like we were placing bets, but it's like, we would discuss amongst ourselves of like, do you think they'll come? I wouldn't come. If I was going to stage a coup, I wouldn't come to this. And they all showed up together.
Oh.
So they all like walked in as a group, like as a united front.
Yeah.
And there were, I think, 4 couples, maybe 5, that walked in as a group together.
Okay.
And so you had the Griswolds, you had the beer ministry, and then you had some of their, the other families who were involved in beer ministry, you know, you had some of their friends. And so they all walk in together and they all sit at a table together. And it was like they sat in the back, but in the middle so they could see everything.
Yeah.
And so anytime I kind of turned, it felt like they were staring directly at us. And so I felt I was very hyper aware that like I was being watched through this whole thing. And so it was weird because Charlotte was acting towards me and towards Brandy in ways that she had never acted towards us. Like giggly and like how I would watch her interact with her pet at women's retreat is how she was like acting with me and Brandy at this banquet. And it, even in the moment, even feeling like I was on the right side, I felt like I made the right choice of we're going to tell Tom and we're going to bring this to light and this is not okay. And I'm working in the office and I am finally getting everything I've ever wanted in terms of having Tom see the importance of what it is that I do. And he's confiding in me and he's thanking me and Brandy and, I owe you girls and, you have proven that, you're loyal and all of this stuff. And it, even through all of that, I felt very like, this, why are you acting like this towards me?
Yeah, because it was totally out of character for her to act that way towards you.
And we're not friends. You've always acted like I don't even want to say like a mom, like your mom's best friend. Like she's not your mom, but she'll be like, "Hey, knock that off," and you have to listen to her.
Yeah.
Is what, like,
yeah.
And so that's the type of relationship I had always had with her. And so it was just really weird. And so when I say this was the most awkward banquet ever, like the whole time I felt just this tension, like, and Tom gets up and he presents his vision for the following year. This is our vision for 2020. This is what God wants us to do. And he plays off of this, we're going to love our community and, we're going to go into our community because God calls us to, go to people. And so, this is what we're doing this year and everything that they talk about, because they do like the recap from the previous year. So everything, he gets up and he does his little spiel. And so everyone has gotten up and shared and he's like, see, we're already doing it. We're already in our community. We're already doing all this stuff. And I remember thinking like, yes, we are. Look at us. How can you want to stage a coup against this?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was like just this big rally, which now thinking back, I'm like, we weren't doing jack shit. Like,
well, no, but you know what? Like, I feel like I know, if I was to ask you this question, I already know what the answer would be. And I feel like we've discussed this enough that I think I know. But for me, because I don't want to speak for you, but these situations, like when it really comes down to it, felt like life and death situations.
Oh, yeah.
And like this choosing sides and this staging a coup and like maybe there are listeners out there that totally understand. Like, this is serious business. Like heaven and hell and night, like life and death. And it's like, these situations really aren't all that. And like, people that like take things to the extreme and make things very polarizing and very like, oh my goodness, the sky is falling. And they think it's like the whole world. And you're like, it's not. You're like, settle down. And the more mature perspective from leadership should be like, okay, well, let's put things into perspective. When you have a leadership that is pushing this as the agenda, that is feeding the drama and bringing people into a place and rallying them into these positions of like, that this silly little event is nothing in the grand scheme of life. This is church. Okay, like seriously. This is church.
Yeah.
And we've turned church into such an idol and such like next to godliness is churchness, that if something is going to rock the boat at the church, it is life and death. It is like your soul. This is the level that we were all invested into this.
Yep.
This is petty, stupid high school drama. And grown-ass adults felt like this was life or eternal damnation level commitments and pledging and rallying and like visions, and it's so funny because in reality, like, it wasn't like, we're in our community. No, you wrote the word on your building. That's not like,
and
it doesn't count.
And the only thing that like we were doing in the community, the Griswolds were doing it. Well, they're mad. Like,
they're the ones.
They're part of the coup. So it just was like tension filled, and it like we had this like, when Tom was speaking, I just kept watching them because I was like, of all the times they're gonna stand up and be like, no, all of this, like, we were anticipating it. And so like we just kept like, I'd look at Tom and I'd look at them, and I'd look at Tom and I'd look at them, and he'd say something and you could tell he was saying something to like prove his point. Like, look at what a great leader I am.
Yeah.
Because God has chosen me to lead this church, and I am so thankful he's chosen me to be your pastor. Because I get to serve him alongside of you. Tom didn't serve alongside anyone. Tom sat his ass in his office or stood on the stage with the microphone. He didn't serve alongside anyone. But, I am so blessed to serve alongside of you, because look at how you love the community. We are known. Our community knows us because we're out there loving them. And I remember just looking at them like, are they gonna say something? Are they, And it came time to take the Lord's Supper, which we always did at the end, and they got up and they left.
Yeah.
And Tom sitting at our table was like, well, that speaks volumes. And then the following Tuesday in the office, he goes on this big rant about how, people get sick by taking the Lord's Supper the wrong way. So at least they knew enough that, they examined their hearts, and they knew that they were not in the right place. Because if you take the Lord's Supper and you have something against someone and you don't take care of that, it like people get sick. People have died from taking the Lord's Supper with malice and anger in their hearts. I know.
But then you wonder why the messages, are so polarizing of like, if you do this, you will die. You know, people get sick and die from taking this wafer and drinking this grape juice. It's safe to drink the grape juice on the shelf on Sunday morning, but not at church when it's part of. I don't understand. Like, you might get sick and I'm sorry. Never really thought about that before. But seriously, like Joe was at the store buying the grape juice off the shelf, and an hour later he's just pouring it in little cups, and now you might die if you drink it. I don't understand.
Yeah. And you have to examine yourself. And, you know, Old Reliable would get it, because that was like his one thing he was allowed to do at the banquet, was he would get up and he'd present the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he would, you know, read about the Last Supper, and, you know, and Jesus took the cup and he gave thanks and gave it to his disciples and said, "Take and drink. This cup is the new covenant in my blood, shed for you. Whenever you do this in remembrance of me." But before he would go into all of that, he would use all these verses about examining yourself. And, you know, if you have something against your brother, and you come to the altar to make your offering, you should leave your offering at the altar and go and take
and be reconciled.
Yeah, be reconciled, and then you can come back and finish your offering at the altar. And, you know, it was almost like, if you have something against someone, you can't take the communion. You're supposed to just leave it there and go and be reconciled. Then you can come back and take communion again. But, like, I mean, Tom was like, people in scripture would die if they took communion the wrong way. And people for centuries have been just taking it and acting like it doesn't mean anything. And, you know, here it comes you up. We take communion seriously. That's why we don't just do it for everyone. We only do it in these special things, because not just anyone can take it. We don't want to serve it on a normal Sunday when anyone could walk in the door and take it, and then we are inviting that curse into their life.
Yeah, because we're seeker friendly. So
and
we're church for the unchurched, so they won't know what it is. We have to
and
teach
that's
them.
why this church and this church and this church down the road, they're not following God, and they're not a true Bible preaching church, because they serve communion every Sunday. And I just, like, sitting there when he was going on his rant, I just felt like he was almost like, well, at least they did this, and at least they left. And I'd be like, why did they even come? Like, what was the purpose of coming? Why would you come? If you don't agree with anything, you didn't, like, because, I mean, the first thing I did, because after the banquet's over, everyone leaves and goes home, I have to stay and I collect all the papers, right? All the papers I put out on the table, I now have to collect them all. I looked to see if they signed their covenants, and no one even filled out a paper.
Yeah.
So
just fact finding. They just showed up to hear what he had to say. I mean,
to see what, so I'm like, why would you even come then? Like, what's the purpose?
Just peace out. Yeah.
And I felt like anger towards Tom of like, why are you even defending them?
Yeah.
But then it was also like, man, what's wrong with me? You know, God, I must really be a sinner if I have this anger towards them, and they're not even staging a coup against me. They're staging it against Tom, and he's already like, well, at least they knew. And
right. How come they didn't say anything? Like, was that their coup? Did they chicken out? Like, nobody knows what's going on now.
Yeah. And so I felt it the whole night, but I think if you were just a normal everyday person attending that banquet, you probably were like, huh? Someone staged a coup? I missed. Was I in the bathroom?
Yeah.
Like,
because did he talk about literally, like, he mentioned that people had staged a coup?
No, he didn't. But he
Or you meant if you're listening now and you were there, you're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, but no, like when he was like giving his vision, he would say stuff of like it in a very like this is the hard thing to try to explain to people is how Tom would talk.
Yeah.
Because he would say stuff without saying stuff. And there was no reading between the lines. If he was talking to you,
You
knew full on he was talking to you.
Yep.
Everyone else in that room could think he was just giving an example. But as he was talking, it was like, well, we built this playground and, we had people who said they would, they would help with it and then they did it. But you know what God did? God used that to allow other people the opportunity to give and to be a part of things. And so had that person given what they said they were going to give in the beginning, these other people wouldn't have had the blessing. And it was like, yes, Amanda was blessed because I wasn't already doing anything for the church. I wasn't already giving every extra penny I had to the church. I needed the extra blessing of putting in time and money and like literal sweat to building this stupid playground.
And the best part is that when you're looking for that blessing, don't worry. If you don't see it here, you'll see it.
It's in heaven.
It's in heaven. A time that you can't prove or have any idea of when that might happen or what's going to be. Have no proof.
Yep.
But I promise you, it's there waiting for you.
I'm about to be the most blessed damn person when we get up there. I'm
Your
telling
retirement fund is
like treasures in heaven.
The level of, I was thinking about this the other day, of like the things that we call faith and then believing in things that are like unseen, and just how far we go into that believing of like, we'll be miserable, blood, sweat, tears, and every penny you have into an organization that's making promises to you. And like I said before, telling you like, hey, perfect love drives out fear. You have no fear in the spirit, but then instilling the fear into you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then when it doesn't come to fruition here, well, then it's a promise for another time, which you may not see the reward here. You may not see the result here. And how, honestly, like, I'm talking to myself, so don't get offended. How stupid am I to sit there and continue to full on believe that garbage?
Yeah.
Because God can't do it. Like, it really just belittles God.
Mm-hmm.
And it belittles everything that you're saying and everything that you're promising, that I have, like, there's some, I can't wrap my brain around like just the lengths and how far we will go in believing some of the stupidest stuff.
Yep.
And I'm like, and then like to be sitting, and like I said, I don't remember if I sang at this banquet or not. Like, probably not. Sometimes I would get Sundays off. I made a stand of like, I need to have Sundays off because that's family day. But also I was not at the right level in the pecking order to always have Sundays off. So I would get like one a month or whatever, or I'd try to work them around events like this. So I can't really say if I was there or not, but I attended a lot of them over the years. And how we idolized this man and just believed so blindly and so naively just this, God said so. God said, I am the pastor. God. I mean, you're going to argue with God? This man is a pastor, and God made him a pastor. And like the level of, I mean, I would even go as far, it's a level of worship. I'm not saying that
Oh
we
yeah.
worshiped Tom, but there is a level of this, because idolization isn't even like, it's more than that. It was almost into that level of worshiping,
Well, I
you know,
feel
the
I feel like
authority he had.
I feel like we did, but he was very, very careful to be like, you don't follow me, you follow God.
Yeah.
No one follows a man. I can only do what I see my father doing. Like, so if you're following me, you're following a person and you're way off. Like, but also everything he did ingrained into you that he was always right.
Yeah.
And there
Well,
was
even in
no
what you just
questioning
said,
him.
he would try to be humble and be like, don't follow me. I'm just a man. I only do what I see my father doing. I'm always right. I'm always following God. God told me I'm right with God. If there's a problem, it must be you. I mean, like, that's what's
Mhm.
weaved in there. And so, even in him saying that, because he said that all the time, there's a
Mhm.
level of, I'm looking humble, but what I'm really saying is that, like, yes, it's all about me and
Yeah.
I'm right. And I'm just as right as God because I'm one with God and God is everything, like, it's like, it's sick, is really what, like,
Mhm. And when you're in there and you're constantly getting that messaging, your your mind does crazy stuff. And so I was fully 100% convinced that everything I did there I was doing for God.
yeah,
Everything. I didn't do anything for Tom. It was all for God. And as I've left and I've gone through therapy and I've really like just, I mean, blew up my entire belief system and tried to figure out what it was that I was going to pick back up again and really starting my faith completely from like this, like, well,
ground zero level, yeah.
is there even a God? Like let's just start from there because I don't even know what's real anymore because I don't trust myself. I can say with 100% like confidence that a lot of what I did was for Tom. There
Yeah,
were things that I did I was like no, but those things that I'm like no, that wasn't Tom. I know there was something else that was driving me to do that. Those are the things I would get in trouble for.
yeah,
Those are the things Tom and Charlotte would be so mad about.
yeah.
And so I don't.
Well, I feel like it's not far-fetched if surgeons and doctors can have God complex. I don't think it's so far-fetched to believe that a pastor can get a
Oh
God.
no, 100%.
I mean,
100%.
because I mean, it's like it's like we excuse it from doctors because they do perform miracles. They do save lives. They do things sometimes that are beyond the scope of what we would consider normal practice, and people's lives are saved. And so I would imagine that it's a very slippery slope for a pastor to constantly be in a position of helping people, that becomes addictive and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes um identity taking over. Like it
Mm-hmm.
really consumes them and they live for that high of saving people essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I mean that's not something I've ever really thought before, but like I think maybe, I mean, I would even go out on a limb, and maybe it's just I'm tired of hearing the word narcissist being thrown around, but maybe that's one of the biggest problems of
Mm-hmm.
what we're calling narcissistic pastors, is just actually that we've bred and we've allowed to breed pastors with God complex.
Yeah. I would agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, I got a new rabbit trail to go down. Ooh.
No, 100%. And over on our Patreon we do kind of break down this, like, why do we feel like we have to take sides? And why was it this, like you said, like this life and death thing? Like,
level of
why?
drama. Like,
Yeah, why
right?
did we put so much on this when in the grand scheme of things, like, I mean, for those of us who were all in, I mean, some people just showed up like, oh, this is a potluck dinner with the people I go to church with. And you got to sit there and you got to listen to everyone's spiel, right? But those of us who were all in, like, this was your, like, you're praising God for everything that you did this last year, and you're getting this vision from God to Tom to you of what this next year is going to be. And it was so, like, there's worship and there's praise, and it's all for God. But we all stood up there and said, look what I did, look what I did. And then Tom said, see what you did? I'm so blessed to be your I led you. And so join us over on Patreon. We're going to kind of dive into that. And we're back regular Thursdays, 6:30 every single week. Chapter 6. It's a good one.